On the Track is a web TV show about cryptozoology, natural history, green issues and whatever else the team feel like making up as they go along. Enjoy!
Well, Hennis, what do you think we should have as an introduction this episode?
Well, considering that you talked about the island of Hiva Oa in the French Marquesas Islands deep in French Polynesia the other episode, and because Jacques Brel, the famous Belgian singer, died in the island itself back in whenever it was, I think that we should be broadcasting Jeff the Talking Mongoose's tribute to Le Moribond by Jacques Brel.
Okay, Hennis, if that's what you want, that's what you're going to get.
We had joy, we had fun, flicking bogies at the sun, but the sun was too hot and the bogies turned to snot.
I think you'll agree with me that that was entirely moving.
I really like the old credits.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jon Downs, and welcome to another episode of On the Track. For those of you who don't know, for the last 30 years I've been the director of an organisation called the Centre for Fortean Zoology, which, as far as we are aware, is the biggest, and we like to think the best, cryptozoological organisation in the English-speaking world. Now, I'm not going to go on the way I usually do about hard science, weird shit, surreality and all the other stuff we do, because I'm going to assume for a change that everybody watching this at least has a rough idea of what it's all about. I do have some news for you. The CFZ Yearbook is very nearly ready to go to the printers. I have every expectation by the time you're watching this, and remember, we film about 2 weeks before it comes out, and I'm actually filming on the Saturday afternoon after the Australian animal special that we did a few weeks ago. God, this is all complicated, trying to talk to you when I know things haven't happened yet, but they're going to. But, ignoring my problems with temporal whatever they are, the CFZ Yearbook will, I hope, be available by the time you watch this, or at least ready for pre-order. So please dig deeply into your wallets and buy a copy. You can always buy a copy for a friend as an Easter present as well. So everything is going to be jolly. I also have some cautiously good news for you. We got the results back from the histology on Archys' 2 little lumps that were cut out by the vet a few weeks ago. They are mast cell tumours, which is what I was hoping they weren't, but, and this is a very big but and quite a useful big but, oh God, I said big but again, that means V and Louie are going to snigger, but let's ignore that for the moment. The big proviso in this is that they appear to be the least malignant, the least aggressive of the type of tumours, and even more important, the vet is fairly confident that she managed to cut them out entirely so they won't be regrowing. The vet herself said that this was a good result. And I told my dear stepdaughter Shoshana, who's also a vet, all about this, what my vet said, and she agreed that it was a very promising result. So all of you, please keep your fingers crossed and hope for the best. Archie's medical problems have cost me the best part of £1,000, but I don't begrudge them even slightly. Archie's part of the family, and that's nothing compared to what some of my family have cost me over the years. Just watching back over the last piece that I recorded, I really don't want it to come over as if I'm asking for money to pay for Archie's vet bills. I think that if people can't afford to pay for the upkeep of their animals, or of their family members, or anything else, that they shouldn't have them in the first place. And I gladly paid out the money for Archie because it's my responsibility, and I'm over the moon that he appears to be out of the woods again. Now, a few weeks ago you will, I expect, remember that we had a online discussion here on the track between me, Richard Freeman and V. McQuinnan about fortune and cryptozoological themed movies. There wasn't room for all of it, so here's another slice. Enjoy.
The other thing that's been done a lot is Bigfoot and Yeti. Nobody, as far as I know, has done an orang pendek film, but there's been lots of films about Bigfoot and the Yeti, and the best for my money is the Hammer's Abominable Snowmen, based on Nigel Neal's TV play, because it doesn't depict the Yeti as a vicious killer. It depicts them just as things that want to be left alone, and the danger in that, the monsters in it, are the humans that are going to try and kill the Yeti and capture them. And it's still the best relic hunting film, I think.
That's saying exactly what Horriman said.
I was going to say there has been one movie I know of about thylacine.
Oh, there's a couple. There's a couple about thylacines.
Yeah. It had. There was one with William Dafoe, wasn't there? William Dafoe as a hunter, and
yeah, it's not terribly good. It was about.
What did you think of that one?
Well, it wasn't very good because they were supposed to have been sent out to hunt the thylacine because some pharmaceutical company had found it had got some chemical in its venomous bite, and thylacines didn't have venomous bites. It was a load of nonsense.
No.
There's one called Dying Breed, where people go looking for the Tasmanian wolf, and they actually find the Tasmanian wolf, but they're also being hunted by a load of sort of cannibalistic hillbillies in the wilds of Tasmania.
So it's like Australia in the Hills Have Eyes.
Yes, very much so, but with thylacines added in. But they're just sort of incidental. They just see them a couple of times.
There's a series of children's books which I'm rather impressed with because they are basically doing swallows and Amazons in Australia for the 21st century. They're really good. And apparently the sixth and final one of the series, which comes out this summer, is all about thylacine in some remote lake in Tasmania. So I'm really looking forward to that. What I was wondering, Richard, we talked quite a lot about the 1950s aquatic monster movies.
Yeah.
Do you think any of them were either influenced by or based on Loch Ness Monster sightings?
Yeah, another Willis O'Brien film, which is basically like a British version of A Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, was called The Giant Behemoth, which is about a sea monster that turns up in Cornwall, and it's radioactive and it breathes radioactive breath like Godzilla, but it looks very like a giant plesiosaur, and it comes rampaging into Britain, crushing cars and things. But it's obviously based very much on the popular image of what the Loch Ness Monster is thought to have looked like. There are actually quite only a very few films specifically about Loch Ness. There's one called the Loch Ness Terror, which was about people finding a Loch Ness Monster egg, and it's all filmed in a lake in America. It's transparently not Loch Ness, and they build a very stiff, fake-looking monster for the film that comes looking for its egg, killing people. It's a dreadful film. It's awfully made. And then much better is What a Whopper, which has got Charles Hawtrey in it and Spike Milligan amongst others. I think is it Adam Faith?
I was just going to say,
it's
I
Adam
think
Faith,
it's
isn't
Adam
it? Yeah, it's about a guy trying to fake Loch Ness Monster sightings to sell his book on the Loch Ness Monster, but the real monster turns up at the end.
I was always really pissed off with that because through my day job I met Adam Faith, nice guy, and I was going to interview him about it and he went up and died, so I never got the chance to talk to him about that movie, but it would have been fun, I think.
One of the weirdest relic hominin films, and one of the best, I really enjoyed it, was Horror Express, which is a very strange one. It runs very like a 1970s Doctor Who story, and it's about two paleontologists on the Trans-Siberian Express.
Oh, I know.
One of them has found a relic hominin frozen in ice, and he's bringing it back to Britain, but it thaws out and it's possessed by a disembodied alien intelligence, and it drains the intellect out of people through their eyes, and it leaves them with brains that are smooth as babies' bottoms, and it can animate the dead as well. And it's got Telly Savalas of Kojak fame in it as a Cossack, and then he gets killed and resurrected as a Cossack zombie, controlled by this alien possessed ape man. And it's got a Mad Monk type character in it who's transparently based on Rasputin. It's very strange. And then another really weird one is Night of the Demon, not to be confused with the classic 50s horror film.
Is that the one where
It's not to be confused with the classic 50s black and white horror film that's based on Casting of the Runes by M.R. James. This is a low budget slasher film where Bigfoot is the slasher, and it's about a group of students led by an anthropology professor who go out looking for Bigfoot, and it turns up killing campers and girl guides, and then picks off all the students one by one. For no apparent reason. There's no reason that is given why it's so angry. But when you actually see it, he looks like an all-in wrestler with some bits of old shag pile carpet super glued to him.
So, V, what is your favourite? Cryptozoological or Fortean movie?
Ooh. I think my favourite all-time one would, if you consider them cryptids, which I do, would be the Troll Hunter. That's my favourite one. And I watched it in English and I watched it in the original, and Lars was quite correct. You should always watch the original one with the subtitles, because the English version is absolute crap. But it's got loads of earthy humour removed because it's not very American. And yeah, that's my favourite one, I think. And there's also another one. I can't remember the name. Sorry, I can't remember the name of it, but Richard would know this one. It's about a sort of a dragony thing that, and it's got David Carradine in it, and it's up on top of a New York skyscraper.
Yeah, it's one of my all-time favourites.
Remember that one?
Yes, it's called Q the Winged Serpent, and it's one of my favourite horror films. And it's about the Mexican dragon god Quetzalcoatl prayed back into existence by human sacrifice, and then it builds a nest on top of the Chrysler building.
That's right.
Swooping down and grabs people off construction sites and out of penthouse swimming pools and stuff. Yeah, it's great. It's got Richard Roundtree in it.
Yeah.
It's my all-time favourite horror. Yeah.
And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? We still haven't finished the conversation. There's enough for one more episode. And it's going back into the vaults and will see the light of day sometime. I'm not sure that I know exactly what I think about this latest story. I'm going to give it to you as I find it without making any snarky remarks, and I'll leave it to you to make your own mind up. This is a gypsy moth. Lymantria dispar, and although the taxonomy of the genus is always in a state of flux, the term gypsy moth has been used for several different species or subspecies of the moth that are found now, because it's been introduced into all sorts of parts of the world. It's now found on 4 or even 5 continents. So, what's the problem? It's been known as the gypsy moth pretty much since Linnaeus first named it in Latin in the 1750s, and to the best of my knowledge it has been known as the gypsy moth since the great age of entomology, which pretty well coincided with Linnaeus's breakthrough in taxonomy. Well, apparently the Entomological Society of America, whose latest logo appears to show somebody setting fire to a beetle, have decided to change the name from gypsy moth to spongy moth. The spongy apparently referring to the spongy egg cases of the moth that are found on trees whenever the moth takes it upon itself to breed. I don't know whether this is purely in America, or whether the Royal Entomological Society, whose latest logo appears to be some sort of ornate butt plug in the United Kingdom, are going to follow suit. But the reason that the name has been changed, at least according to the Daily Mail, and I don't usually use the Daily Mail as the sort of source material I trust very much, but according to the Daily Mail, the change has been made because of the word gypsy is widely seen as a racist slur against the Romani people. Well, one of the problems here is that the words gypsy moth, and indeed the word gypsy, have become part of the English language in other uses. For example, the gypsy moth was an aeroplane. The moths were a series of light aircraft designed by the famous aircraft designer Geoffrey de Havilland in the 20s and 30s. One of them was this, the DH-60, the gypsy moth. But the story behind how and why it got named the gypsy moth is a very interesting one, and for this you have to go to the archives of one of my great heroes, the butterfly expert Hugh Newman, who died back in 1993. Some years after the First World War, he wrote, I was lunching with a young aircraft designer who mentioned that they were having difficulty in finding suitable names for various types of planes then being evolved. Why not use moth names, I suggested. Puss moth, for instance. Not a bad idea, he said. I must remember that. By coincidence or not, the puss moth biplane appeared a few years later, followed in due course by the gypsy moth and the tiger moth. In 1967, this boat, once described as the worst racing yacht ever built, was sailed single-handedly around the world by Sir Francis Chichester. Her name? Yeah, you've guessed it. Gypsy moth. 2 subspecies of gypsy moth, or real species, depending on which taxonomists you speak to are quite rightly labelled as invasive species in North America. Indeed, they are in the top 100 species labelled as invasive species because, as a pest, these little caterpillars can do enormous damage to hardwood trees all across the continent. And I think this is where quite a lot of the problem comes from. In North America, the term gypsy moth is synonymous with a dangerous invasive species, whereas in Britain, for example, it's not an invasive species, it's not dangerous, and it's only known as quite a little pretty night-flying insect. And also in Britain it's known as a famous aeroplane and the yacht of a very brave mariner. All, in the UK at least, perfectly positive associations. And I think it is the negative association in the United States which is half the problem, because, as I'm sure Prince Andrew would tell you, these days it is the American interpretation of the nuances of language which matters, not the British one. And so, bye-bye gypsy moth. Hello spongy moth, which sounds also a bit like a Saturday morning kid TV character. You might think I'm cross about this, I'm not. Nothing remains static, not even nomenclature. And although I find it mildly amusing, I'm not angry that because the name Gypsy is now seen as offensive by a whole human race of people, then it is probably quite right and proper that the moth's name is changed. I find it mildly annoying that it seems to have been done unilaterally by an American group of entomologists, but even then there's nothing I can do about it. I actually find it mildly funny. Although I have to say that I'm intrigued to see what happens with the backstory with the aeroplane and the yacht. Will they be retrospectively named something else, or will calmer heads prevail and everybody, whether or not they are in the entomological or Roma communities, be quite happy to let sleeping yachts lie? And also, what will happen with this record? Jimi Hendrix's Band of Gypsies, will this soon become the Band of Spongies? What's this space? I feel that I am vaguely qualified to speak on this subject, but that's only because as a Caucasian, even though I do have Roma blood in me, just under a 16th, I think, because my maternal grandfather was apparently half Roma himself, but I don't really care. As far as I'm concerned, it's not the colour of a man's skin that matters, or the colour of a man's genome. Oh, by the way, take that to mean women and everybody else as well. But like Bob Marley said, I wait for the time when the colour of a man's skin is of no more importance than the colour of his eyes. I stand by that, and I think, despite the fact someone told me the other day that that was racist, I think that is a perfectly good axiom to stand behind. Now, I find it mildly funny, and I'm almost tempted to annoy Louis by starting up a campaign on behalf of all the other Caucasian people with pale pink skin like mine to complain about another species which even in Britain is known as a pest, the cabbage white. Why should this vicious predator that eats all our brassica be called after the colour of my skin, which isn't actually white at all, it's pink? But why should it be? Shall I start off a campaign? No, probably not. But I might pretend to for a bit just to annoy Louis.
If you want to support us and help us make more content like these, please press like, subscribe, follow our Facebook page and check out our Patreon.
And as the ghost of Joe Strummer, who is an ever more regular visitor to my little studio, wants me to remind you, always press the notification bell. Otherwise you won't be told when there's a new show to watch.
And that would be an awful pity, wouldn't it?
And now we've come to the end of the show. I hope you're not all too saddened and disappointed. I hope you enjoyed watching it. I put it together on the Saturday afternoon watching the Australia show with Louis and V, and on the Sunday afternoon after I found out that I couldn't actually do any work because the internet was down. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it educational, edifying and entertaining. See, I remembered my 3 E's then. There is one thing that I missed out of my diatribe about the gypsy moth and other insects. And that is the one thing about this which actually does make me cross. What was wrong with this logo? Why on earth did such a prestigious organisation as the Royal Entomological Society have to change to this abomination? Oh well, I'm getting old. No, I don't understand the modern world, and on the whole the modern world doesn't understand me. For those of you who are truly upset, it's the end of another show and you're going to have to wait 7 whole days for another one. You've got 2 options. Apparently Hennis is providing counselling in a little hut he's built behind the compost heap. But alternatively, if you don't want to go wandering behind the compost heap with a make-believe chicken, it might be better for you just to grit your teeth and wait till next Wednesday when there'll be another On the Track extra, which I believe is something to do with books again. And of course in 7 days, it's only 7 days, there will be another episode of On the Track. What's going to be in it? I haven't a bloody clue because I haven't made it up yet. But it will be there. And so in 7 days, I'll be there, ready for you. If you're there watching me, then I'll be seeing you.